think, everybody would agree some of the best, the best part of it is just everybody sharing ideas. And that's what we have today, is a lot of just ideas and brainstorming. It goes without saying, none of us are medical doctors at Three Dots Design. Of course, you guys need to follow your guidelines set up by your local and state governments, all the safety requirements and everything else. What we do consider ourselves to be somewhat experts in is retail space, right? And that's what we have, been living and breathing in for the last 20 years. So we spent, as many of you know, I see a lot of familiar faces out there who I've worked with over the years. We spend a lot of time designing spaces, thinking about spaces, being in spaces, looking at them, specialty retail, that's kind of what we do. That's how our brain works. So when this thing first hit a couple of months ago, that was the first thing, that we sort of, where we landed was, first thing we started thinking about is, how is this going to affect, the layout of the stores? What on earth is going to happen here? Sorry, I'm having a little view problem. Just going to try to switch something out here. Okay. For some reason, Ryan is the only one I can see. I don't know what happened there, but okay. So that's what we started thinking is like, oh my gosh, this is like everything else is really going to change the way your store, the way your layout has to be in your store. Maybe some transactional processes are certainly going to change. I know we've talked about a lot of different things over the last few calls, but I've got, for some of you who have seen my presentations in the past, I always have some pictures because I think it's easier to illustrate a lot about what we're doing here. Did that work, guys? Do you guys see the Stephen Hawking quote? Great. Okay. So I've used this quote a lot over the years when I present, the ability, intelligence is the ability to adapt to change. And obviously we've seen more change in our lives and our worlds and our retail landscape in the last, 8 weeks than anybody could ever imagine. Right. And unfortunately, the way you is really in the next few weeks as we start to reopen is really going to, I think, make or break your reopening, right? I know that everybody out there is in totally different places in their timetable. Some of you guys have never even closed. Some are online only, some are curbside only, some are appointment only. The range is huge. So we've got a bunch of ideas here that are, some people it's going to click with and it's going to be very appropriate. Others are going to say, oh my gosh, are you crazy? We don't even have to think about that. It's all over the board, but what I'm hoping is that at the end of the call here, you'll all have some new ideas. Maybe some of you have been just so busy running and gunning, just trying to keep your business alive right now that you haven't been able to sit down and think, oh my gosh, what's going to happen when I really do open the store? So, everybody out there, I always like to go outside of our channel to really see what else is happening. Everybody's doing the same thing you are, right? Nordstrom, what we're thinking about reopening, everywhere you look online, the big guys out there are having to address their retail space. McDonald's, this is over in the Netherlands, they're running this trial right now on what they're considering, to be a virus-proof restaurant. So they've got the big socially distanced squares or circles on the outside. They've got the sneeze guard dividers that, you're starting to see at retail stores. Maybe some of you have them. Another thing they're trying to roll out is this idea that, hey, maybe we'll bring your food to you so that people aren't having to stand up at the counter with other people and be too crowded. So all kinds of different ideas. And I don't, I'd love to keep this really open to, at any time, feel free to jump in with ideas that you guys have seen or have started implementing that's working in your store. But I'm going to just dive right in with fixture placement. This is a biggie. In my opinion, this type of fixture placement wouldn't have even been appropriate before the whole COVID situation, but especially not now, right? You just simply cannot have people walking through your space bumping into fixtures, or even having to touch any sort of fixture or piece of product or anything in your store that they don't want to touch. You've got to move out of their way so they don't have to touch it, right? If there's maybe a protrusion or a waterfall that comes off of a fixture or something that's just a little in the path that every single person that walks by has to put their hand out and touch and move around, that's bad, right? It's never good, but right now especially. So I've talked with a lot of folks about the idea of literally just pulling 20, 30, 50% of their fixtures off their floor entirely right now, depending on the size of space you have and how much wiggle room you might have. That might be something you want to consider, you know. Again, it's about, you know, one of the things that I think is as important as keeping your staff and your customers safe is making them feel safe, making sure your customers feel like when they walk into your store, you have put their safety top on your list, and you have made physical adjustments in your space that they can see and that are quantifiable, so that they, you know, a lot of these people haven't left, a lot of your customers haven't left their houses at all, besides maybe the grocery store in the last couple of months. So this is going to start to be a big outing as stores start to open. I know there's a big wave of openings tomorrow. There's another big wave next Friday around the country, and there's another big wave the following Friday. So over the next few weeks, this is really going to start happening. And you have to really think about how nervous some of your customers are going to be when they walk in. So another thing I think that's important to consider with fixture placement is what kind of traffic flow are you creating in your space? So are you creating some areas where your customer could potentially be dead-ended or stuck in a corner, especially, or an alcove, or some area where they might feel like if somebody, this is too close right here, right? We've got somebody trying on a bench here. It's an uncomfortable amount of space between these fixtures for somebody to walk up and shop at this rack. But even more than that, if somebody were to maybe want to go get some socks over here, they might be standing here thinking, do I want to go in that corner? Because if somebody walks in over here, I'm gonna be really uncomfortable. So I think those sorts of things to consider as far as your placement of your fixtures are really important. What kind of traffic flow, you know, do you want to do the arrows on the floor that you're starting to see probably in some of your grocery stores? A lot of grocery store aisles are doing, you know, one lane, one direction, which I think is a great idea. You know, of course it's different depending on the size of, you know, store that you have and what kind of square footage you have. It might be more appropriate in larger stores than smaller, but no matter what your space is, I think you need to step back and think about when your customer walks in the front door, how are they going to navigate? Are there any areas where they're going to feel trapped? Are there any areas where it could be really uncomfortable quickly for if another customer to walk in? I think most of you that are opening right now or in the next week are going to have restrictions as far as the number of customers in your space, so it won't be as much of a concern as maybe a crazy Saturday where you might have had 30 people in at once. It's probably not going to happen for a while, but nonetheless, it's still something that your customers are going to be thinking about. So I just wonder, have people that are open or that are thinking about opening, has anybody done any kind of rearranging with their floor space already, their fixtures? Thought about this at all? Anything out there that people are doing? Maybe they want to share? Are people open? Is anybody open 100% fully operational right now? Yeah. Okay, couple. Okay. What about fitting, shoe fitting? So let me try and share this again here. You know, the back-to-back benches, we've obviously, you know, that's a pretty common way for people to arrange their fitting area. We're gonna have to change that. You know, you obviously can't have customers sitting here back to back, right? So ideally you've got 6 feet in between those benches, or if they're chairs, whatever they might be. If you've got, maybe people are limiting a lot of their sitting areas, 1 person per bench. And again, you know, 6 feet in between the benches. I spoke with somebody at the Fleet Feet Carborough store. They're going to be opening tomorrow. That's the flagship store for Fleet Feet. And he took a piece of 2x4 he had in his yard and he cut it 6.5 feet. And he went into the space and took that 2x4 and just walked through the whole space, through all the fixtures and all the benches, everything that they had in the store. And if they couldn't fit that piece of wood in between the fixtures, they moved it to the back room, which I thought was a pretty, you know, and 6.5 feet, honestly, if you've got 2 people shopping, is kind of even pushing it. But also cash wraps. Have you thought at all about the process for actually checking your customers out? I've had quite a few stores that I've talked to in the last couple of weeks tell me that when they open, they're probably gonna, not even operate with one of their maybe they had 2 or even 3 to start with. They're gonna work with just one, just so it's less to manage, easier to manage the flow of the customers. Again, I think the social distancing floor decals, maybe arrows could be helpful. In this concept, we've made it real clear where the customer enters. We've put dividers. It could be stanchions, but if you've got multiple aisles that you are going to use, I would suggest some sort of a divider, actually. And then when the customers walk up, there's a sneeze guard at the cash wrap, and it's very, very clear that they've got a path. So this is where they're leaving. They don't turn around and bump into the other customer. They're not wondering which way do I go. It's like it's very clear. So again, the exit's over here. You're streaming them in. You're steering them out to the exit. So if you've heard me speak over the years, the thing I really, really drive home is that you don't want your customers to ever have to think or work at all to figure out where your clothing is or your accessories or whatever they're looking for. This is the exact same concept here, right? Your customers are so stressed out right now, and as we all are for various reasons, bogged down. Their brain is full with a whole bunch of other things that they're not used to thinking about and they don't want to be thinking about. So take, shopping in your store off their list as far as something they need to stress about, right? Make it easy for them, make it comfortable, make it very clear. I don't think you're going to have any customers complaining because they feel stifled. They're going to be applauding you for making them feel safe when they walk into your space. So also it came up with somebody a couple days ago in a conversation, the idea of, you've got prepaid customers who have already handled their purchasing online and they need to come in, and maybe they need to have a separate lane for picking things up, a separate aisle or a separate counter away from the checkout that's very clearly marked. Again, anything you can think of that's going to avoid that's kind of like some ideas we've just had for general layout things. We've got a couple categories that we're going to talk about a little bit specifically too, but I'd love to open it up before we switch gears if there's anybody that wants to share anything or ask any questions about any layout, cash wrap process.
So Holly, we do have a question, and it's about a topic that you and I spoke about and texted about the last 24 hours, which is apparel. So
which is our next topic.
Yes. Okay. All right. So I'm setting you up perfectly. So take it away.
Was there a specific question or just how are we going to handle apparel?
I think the question was, how do you suggest handling apparel? Only one size of an SKU out on a display like you do?
Let's talk about it. So yeah, one of the things Mark and I have been talking about is, did that work? Did it share?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. You can never tell from this end. Is what's going to happen with a few of these high touch categories that we deal with, right? And apparel, I think, comes to mind because, of course, there's the try-on factor, over your nose, over your mouth for tops, and then nutrition, an actual consumable. Those are two, I think, that are especially high touch. Let's start with apparel. Again, you guys aren't alone. So Saks Fifth Avenue, they are taking clothing. They just, in this I think there's a lot of question out there. Hopefully there'll be some more guidelines that kind of come out from authorities on this whole subject about how long actually you might want to be quarantining clothing. But to be safe, like I say, Saks Fifth Avenue is doing 48 hours. Urban Outfitters and Target, they announced that they will not even be allowing trying on clothing right now at all. There'll be no fitting rooms. So, one of the ideas we came up with is, maybe you want to have, I would say, certainly you'd want to consider having less clothing on your store floor. I've talked to 3 retailers actually be removing apparel for the next hopefully not too long, but for the next, in their opening phase, maybe 4 or 5 weeks. But they have very small apparel sections to begin with. A lot of stores obviously have much larger categories. They don't want to remove apparel, understandably. So some of the ideas we had were, maybe you just pull out, let's say you've got 5 mannequins in your space. So bring those 5 mannequins out on, your top 5 hottest, newest outfits. You've got full size runs on, pull all the rest of the clothing in the back and put a sign that says, our please grab a staff member. We'll be happy to go grab your clothing for you. I would say most people right now are feeling like they don't want to allow fitting and trying on in their fitting rooms to happen in their store right now, certainly whatever you're comfortable with. But we've had a couple stores that have told me that they're going to be extending their standard return policy window. So you can buy the clothing, bring it home, try it on. If it is going to get returned, then you as a store owner knows that was obviously tried on. And I would suggest that you're probably going to take that clothing after the return and put it in this kind of, for however long is safe and appropriate. Another idea, let's see, when I was talking to the Fleet Feet Carrboro folks yesterday, they've got a very large apparel section, and they are going to be pulling a significant amount of apparel off the floor altogether. So it's just less opportunity for things to get touched and handled, easier to manage. And then what we talked about is maybe every week, possibly rotating out something fresh, but not just having this whole part of your store filled with apparel, just simply because of the management piece of it. Fleet Feet Sacramento store. I don't know if Ben's on the call here or not, but I heard about a really cool thing they did, and maybe some of you guys are doing this, a virtual fashion show. So new spring product is coming in. They did a fashion show. It was a Facebook Live thing, and I guess they did it last week, and it was super successful. Customers really embraced it. Purchases were being made. Think about it. For those who are still working and who haven't been, hit too hard financially, which there's a lot of people that have and a lot of people that haven't, they want to buy something. They want to support local retailers. And a lot of people are just spending money on groceries and nothing else right now. So giving them an opportunity like this, I had the thought that, geez, you could do a fashion show, virtual fashion show once a week.
We lost Holly there a little bit, but she referenced Saks Fifth Avenue, and that's what I know when Saks reopens, that's what they plan to do. They are going to do virtual trunk shows where it's like, hey, this week the brand is, On Running. This week the brand is, Lolé, whatever it is. And they'll do, like Holly suggested, they'll do a little presentation online. And the idea would be that would drive sales either off the website or from a pickup point of view in the store.
Can you hear me now? Am I back? A fashion show thing is a really cool idea. So does that give you some ideas on apparel management, less apparel on the floor, maybe making returns easier, probably not doing a lot of fitting try-on right now? Again, use your mannequins. If you've got mannequins that have been in the back room collecting dust, pull them out, put some clothing on them, and pull the inventory off the floor right now, maybe, and just so it's easier to manage. Anybody been doing anything different with their apparel at all out there? Can't see what's happening on the chat here. Let's see, try on socks during fitting room. Yes, no, maybe. Or during fitting of shoes. Yes, no, maybe. Well, that's you guys can hear me okay, right? Okay. That's an interesting question. I mean, again, this is where I come in. I'm not, can't really give like the medical advice on the transfer of the virus, but, I think personally that shirt coming over your mouth and your nose concern than somebody's sock on their foot. I don't know if the risk is quite the same there, or if the concern is the same. I really think the apparel is where people are having a little bit more of a concern about that transfer concern with the virus. But I don't know. Are others they're trying on with socks and footwear trying on?
I would throw just one quick comment in on that, and that's that I think over the last 7 or 8 years, most running specialty stores have done a really good job of getting their sock to shoe ratio pretty high. I know there's places that are well over 1-to-1, and we're in that range, close to 1-to-1. And so most of our customers buy a pair of socks anyway. So we're doing, I believe it is a consideration for transmission. Rare, the odds are pretty slim, but I think the perception on the customer's part, especially in areas where you might, like Chicagoland, where you might have a high rate of infection and death, that people are maybe going to be a little more paranoid. So we're going to require everybody we have a little bit of a process, but everybody will have to try on shoes with a fresh pair of socks, a new pair from us. They do not have to purchase them. We'll have the chat when they get in the store. They'll know ahead of time that we're going to do this, but we did luckily, coincidentally, last fall buy a very large number of technical socks from New Balance as they changed the vendor. So we have a lot of a nice $12 sock that we bought at a low price. So if I think we sell them for $8, and our cost is pretty low. So if somebody says, I don't want to buy a sock, we'll use that as the sock for them to try it on with. And then we'll just collect that sock afterwards and, let it quarantine itself for a while and then donate those, in a few months or whatever. So, but I think most people will be okay with it. I think we'll probably, in theory, we might even have a higher rate of selling socks unintentionally, but at the same time, like we will say, hey, we hope you buy a sock. We need you to try it on, and we'd hope you'd buy it, but you don't have to. So that's the angle we're taking. But I just clarify that we're kind of on the extreme side of once somebody comes in the door, trying to keep it. If they happen to have the virus, we're trying to minimize where it might go.
I think that's a great suggestion. Chris, what about apparel with you guys? I mean, what are you going to do with your apparel?
Our policy already is, full satisfaction guarantee. And, again, feedback on that would be nobody's trying anything on in the store like that. We're taking away our foot scan, but buy it. Most people I would say the odds of a return on apparel from people that want to get something and they kind of know their size, I'd rather take it back and then quarantine it when it comes back than quarantining if you quarantine right now without cleaning something, I believe the minimum is like 3 days, is kind of the way we understand it. But there's other fogs and other stuff that they're talking about being able to clean, but we're just gonna let people buy it. We've cleared out space. We have a lot more open space, to try and do all of our setups in our stations. So apparel is going to take a hit, but we'll let people buy and return.
Right.
I think we've been talking a lot about that, Chris. And I think it's a good point that, you have an opportunity to semi-curate to the person, the customer that's coming in, to up the items per transaction. In that, a lot of people's processes now is that they're talking to people on the phone before they come in. They're having a conversation, like you said, as they come in about how the store process is now, which I think allows you to gather maybe a little bit more information to present them with things that they might not have thought about taking home with them that we know will help turn them into a runner versus just a purchaser of, whatever they came in for that day. So, having that potential piece of apparel or, a garment or, something else to suggest when you're also going through the shoes, the socks, so that you're getting that complete process, getting somebody fully up to speed.
Yeah. And I think I did hear feedback from Adam White. He opened on Monday. That's a whole story in itself. And Whitey, you might be on here somewhere, but he told me that his UPT is significantly higher in these first 4 days that he's been open. So,
well, you guys are both hitting on an interesting point that I should share. We have 2 bike store clients that I talked with them last week, and both of them are doing appointment only. One is mandated appointment only. The other is allowed to open, but isn't comfortable opening yet. So decided to continue appointment only. They're talking to their customer ahead of time, like we're talking about. They're getting a sense for what their needs are. They're having a collection of products curated when they walk in. So they've got 3 or 4 bikes pulled with some accessories. Both stores have their March over last year, more than doubled. Both of them. And he said, if somebody would have told me that I would be doing this kind of a business with an appointment only approach, I would have laughed at them, because it's hard to conceive of. But I think what's really happening is the customers, if they're coming out of their house, they're making a concerted effort. If they've called you ahead of time, if they've made an appointment, they're committed. They probably want something. And B, that concierge feeling like, hey, we've already pulled these pieces for you. Of course, there's no pressure, but we've thought about it. We're trying to really align your needs with this product, and these are a good fit. So it's kind of interesting. It's a little bit of a silver lining that these guys were experiencing. They both were blown away by this, and they're both talking about
you're helping your customer ultimately. They're potentially new. We're all looking outside and seeing all the new people that are running and inviting. We don't know where they are. They're coming in and buying all their bikes. It's a chance to have them not have to leave the house again and take running shoes.
and that's
take more things with them.
You there for a minute, but I just wanted to speak to a couple of the things. First of all, the sock question. I spoke to the folks at Features yesterday, and they asked the same question that Jeff Anderson asked. And I know they're working on a program. I hope I'm not giving it away or misspeaking, but you should talk to your Features rep, because I think Features was going to do a program where they sort of helped retailers with the whole try-on process along the lines of what Chris was saying, where they were going to give you socks on a preferential price or sort of share the risk with you. But I think the idea of, somebody takes the trouble to come into your store and they get a brand new pair of socks to try on the shoes. That's, as Chris said, that's a great opportunity to sell. Another thing is to speak to what Holly was saying. I think if people are coming into the store, they're not coming in to browse. One retailer told me confidentially that they've been doing fittings by appointment. And I think they had done again, I think the notion of people coming in, getting fit, trying on a pair of shoes and walking out empty-handed or empty-footed more appropriately, I think those odds are slim. If someone's coming into your store, I think they're showing pretty serious intent to buy something.
Mark, both of these bike shop owners, 100% conversion rate, which for a bike shop, that's unheard of.
Yeah, and if I can just throw one other thing in there, because I've heard from a few people about this, and it's been discussed, and it's very fair. That if you're putting all this effort into a customer, should you require that they purchase something? And this goes to exactly what you just said. My advice to them has been, no, don't even talk about it like that.
Uh-huh.
I think you're going to have such a high rate anyways, and it's not the same as somebody coming in with a magazine or whipping it out on their phone to, they're trying to use you. I think the odds of that are greatly diminished now. And I think putting any kind of stipulation in there is going to be a negative. So
I agree entirely. Yeah.
I will say we've been open for a week now, and we are just doing appointments only. And today was the very first time we had a person sign up for an appointment who didn't buy something. UPTs are up, the dollars per transaction are up. People are feeling a lot safer, having fewer people in the store.
Awesome.
And we have found some of those beginners have signed up for their appointments and have said, oh, I feel more comfortable asking questions when there aren't a lot of people in the store. Or, hey, I'm going to try on that bra that I wouldn't do it if it was full of people in the store. Yeah, I'll get on the treadmill. I wouldn't do that if the store was full of people. So we're actually discussing the possibility of doing a hybrid as we open up further. Open. So
Interesting.
yeah, we're trying to figure that out.
There's a future for scheduled appointments, and some of the things we have been, prior to this whole thing happening, we had looked at moving our main store up a mile from where we are on a very high traffic area that people drive by at starting at 6 a.m. and we started going like, hey, maybe we have a couple of employees working from 7 to noon or something, and people would love that. And I think I hope that's a little bit of what happens here, is that the scheduling aspect of things will give you the chance to take things back. And I hope we can keep using it down the road. We were a little fearful of, and we still haven't done it yet, but we've thought through these, that if we have 6 fitting stations at our main store and we have scheduled appointments open and they all get filled, that good problem to have. But there's some negatives to that. So we're only going to have probably half or maybe 2/3 of the appointments available, that people can book kind of anytime. And then every day in the morning, we'll drop open a bunch of, like 2 other slots or 1 other slot. So people can do same day appointments. I mean, we're getting onto a whole different subject here, but something to consider. And we didn't come to that thought until, 2 weeks of going back and forth on how we're going to do this. So I don't know what other people have seen or done on that, but we don't want people to go like, I can never get in there. Forget it. I'm going to go somewhere else.
Right. And Chris, do people book the appointments online, over the phone? How do they do it?
Yeah, online. And the software that we're going to use allows them to almost do everything. We have I wanted it to be almost no touch from our end because this is going to be a nightmare, right? And there's the Calendly is what we ended up using. We looked at a couple different ones, but this one allowed us to have, appointments and them make their appointments. We're tiering the appointments. So if we open at 10, we don't have 6 appointments at 10. We have one at 10, 10:05, 10:10, some of the things you just don't. I'm glad somebody thought about that before we, started doing it. So I'd love to hear more people that have already done this and how it's going. I'm in theory world right now.
So we are also using Calendly. We have not tiered our appointments, but we're a smaller store, so we're only allowing 2 appointments every half hour at this point.
Mm-hmm.
I will say timeliness has been an issue. People showing up early or significantly late. So we've had one other person staffed who can, and we have the room to do that, be that floater person, but that is an issue.
And that was one of the questions is how long are you making these appointments? 30 minutes? Is that kind of what most people are doing?
Yep, we've done 30 minutes and, some of those people who know what they want, they come in, they want their socks and their nutrition and they're out the door in 5 or 10 minutes. Some of those beginners have come in and stayed an hour to an hour and a half. So they're getting that one-on-one attention. They're loving it. It's leading to sales, but it can tend to line out. So,
right.
In 20 minutes with a 10-minute on the end for the employee to, ring it up, clean up and take a breather. But we are limiting it to 3 pairs. This is extreme, right? Right now they can't try anything on. So we could make it 1 pair try on. You get to try on what you're going to buy, but we're doing 3. But we're going 20 minutes. We'll have a little beep thing for each, we have an iPad, our staff, and it'll give a little alert when there's 5 minutes left and they can say, hey, we got to wrap it up. Sorry. But I think the key thing in all of this, when we get there, we'll probably change and it won't be easy and we'll have hiccups, but we are going to be abundantly clear about how this is going to work, and I don't, if somebody's 10 minutes late, they're going to get 10 minutes to do their appointment, that's just the way it's going to be, we believe. So, I can't wait to hear from more stores.
You hit a really good point, which is, hey, right now people can't even come in your store. So some of these ideas, I talked to a gal yesterday and she was like, Holly, that's ridiculous with the clothing in the back. And I said, hold on, you don't have your store is closed right now. So is it really ridiculous? Baby steps. The more your customers come in and feel at the beginning you're doing everything you can to ensure that they are safe, the more they're going to trust you and feel comfortable. And then maybe they'll come back, 2 weeks later, and maybe there's another phase of things that have changed in your store. It's got to be a tiered thing. It's just like how everything's happening with the states and the counties and everything else, right? This is no different. If you start off a little stringent, I don't think anybody's going to be complaining. You're looking out for their safety and you got to make sure you can manage it.
Pulling product off the floor, putting things in the back room, leaving more space on the walls, I think allows for you to move some of those key products around that people still need to be able to get to and not be too close to each other and just free up a little space. If you are in one of those smaller spaces that's having trouble finding that 6 foot between a category or a fixture.
Well, Andy, you just had a good point that I forgot to mention earlier before we get into nutrition here, which is the final topic. When I flashed one of those pictures of merchandise of the product on the wall, I wanted to point out, hey, let's put some breathing room on your wall merchandising. So if somebody wants to shop your socks and your insoles are right there and your footwear is right there, everybody doesn't have to be right next to each other, right? Again, it's not long term, it's not forever, but why don't you put 2 or 3 feet between each categories, even on your wall? So it just gives people a buffer. It's that you don't have to leave it up to the customer to decide what's right. You've already done it for them. Like, there's nothing to shop there, so move. You're not going to be there. It's an empty spot. Some breathing room. So nutrition, I mentioned earlier, but we didn't dive too far into it. This is a category I think people are a little nervous about, understandably, for 2 reasons. One, the nature of shopping nutrition is usually putting your hand in the box or the bin and grabbing a few things and touching the things around it. And 2, sometimes you're opening it right up and eating it right then. You're going out for a run. It's like, yikes, that's a little, that's like a double whammy of concern. So again, some people are pulling nutrition totally off right now. They're doing online sales only, and with the incentives to purchase higher quantities. Like, hey, load up, get 2, 3, 4 dozen items, and we'll give you a discount. Do it online, we'll ship it to you, or do curbside pickup. So, hey, I mean, that's I think the high road and the safest way. If you're going to have a nutrition in the store, one idea was, what about a glass case maybe you've had in your back room, a sunglass display, a GPS display, or something that's been out on the floor, that maybe you could consolidate a little bit and just kind of like when you're at a bakery and they've got, one of all the fancy cakes out, but then they've got, the back stock of the pound cake or whatever made in the back that they decorate for you, that kind of an idea. Hey, we've got a little smattering so you can see in the not putting them all out right now for obvious reasons, for your safety. So those are kind of a couple of the ideas that we have come up with and talked to people about nutrition. I think it's definitely a category of concern for people. Obviously, sampling is out right now. I think that goes without saying. But one idea was, maybe some vendors would be open to developing some small sample packaging. So it's not the traditional way we used to sample where we'd put it out on the store floor, but maybe you can do some small sampling in the bag of everything, every purchase that leaves your store. So you can still kind of get that sense of sampling and like a freebie. If we could get some vendors to jump in on that, which I'm sure some of them would be more than happy if they got some of these requests. So that was another idea we had. I'm seeing some. Yeah.
I think that was in response to a question about, is your staff wearing gloves? And if so, what the protocol is.
Got it. Okay. So, yeah. So, are people skittish about nutrition out there? Are you guys, is this a category you're worried about or that you're making changes in, or any ideas from people that are open? What do you want to?
There was another question, Holly, about does anyone plan to keep their water coolers or fountains open?
Good question. My thought would be no, but I don't know what people are doing out there. I mean, anything that somebody can touch, you don't want them touching things. It's like that's the reality of where we are right now. So I don't know if other people have anything they want to chime in on that. What about the bathrooms? I see a question. I don't really think people are going to have bathrooms open to the public right now. I mean, I wouldn't if it were my store. You can always make an exception if somebody's got a situation, but I think as a general rule, bathrooms, fitting rooms closed to the public right now. I don't know. What do you guys think? What are you guys thinking? I see heads nodding.
I promise not to talk anymore, but I'm going to say this. I told Marissa we're going to have a poop-o-meter. If somebody has to go so bad that then we'd let them. But we contacted the company, one of the companies that we use for our store supplies for our main store. We don't use it for our smaller stores, but we're going to have those we researched a little bit, the little toilet cover things that flush, that you flush. We're going to have those. There's just going to be people that need to use the bathroom,
Sure. Yeah, of course.
So we're going to do that. And then, that's up to them. They use that. And then, we aren't going to do a full fumigation of the bathroom afterwards. But they can go ahead then and wash their hands afterwards and, flush that thing down the toilet, wash their hands like you need to do anyways, and, walk out. You know, that's our plan. We're not really going to promote that it's open.
Right.
And those things
Right.
aren't that expensive. I think if Kyle's on here, he could chime in, but I feel like they're maybe a nickel or something, like maybe not even.
And
It's like $4.02 for 250 of them, roughly.
Yeah, pretty affordable. And I see some questions about kids in the store. And that's come up, actually. I'm glad somebody brought that up. You know, that's sort of the unknown factor, right? When you've got a little kid, and I think that makes some people nervous. I have had some stores tell me that they are going to only allow 2 people from a family unit that come in. So if you're bringing your son or your daughter in, fine, but you can't, you know, family of 5 is not going to be able to come in at all at the same time, just from a simple management standpoint. That's really all I've heard. I don't know if anybody's actually restricting kids other than that out there right now already. Rich, you guys are open in Florida? Hi, Rich. You see me? Rich Wells?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we're open in Florida for the last 2 days, and it's been fantastic. And we took a tab from Kathy Dalby, who said a few weeks ago that the most important thing to be is empathetic towards customers and staff, because everybody's at a different point on this continuum of I'm super concerned about this or I'm not concerned at all about this.
Yep.
And so we've taken that and made that our mantra. Thanks, Kathy. And but we've also definitively said we are not in the business of policing people who come into our stores. So we have a minimum or maximum capacity number of people, but we're definitely never ever going to tell people, hey, you can't bring your kid in, or you can't bring only 2 members of your family in. I think that's just what we've seen for the last 2 days here in Florida, which will be comforting, I think, to a lot of people, is people are really respectful of everybody else in the store. So
Good.
Most of our customers coming in have been, you know, not only has there not been, are we not going to be policing customers? We're wearing masks ourselves and doing the things that we should be doing, but we're letting customers be customers and come in at the point on this continuum that they are at. And thankfully, without, to my knowledge at least, everyone's been really respectful of
Good.
other
Have
people.
That's great to hear. And have you had to make any internal changes, like in your space physically? I've been in all your stores. Most of them have enough breathing room in them already, but have you moved things around at all, or didn't you have to do that?
We moved things around a little bit to try and create more space for the fitting area, and that's the extent of it. We didn't take product off the shelves. We're buying some of those lightsaber wands to use if we ever get them on apparel and shoes after they've been tried on or come back from return with the UV light. But other than that, like Chris was saying, we're letting some product rest in quarantine when it comes back for a return.
Yeah.
But we're keeping our bathrooms open, and we don't sell that much apparel anyway. Unfortunately, I'm very sad about that. But so it hasn't been an issue as to whether or not people need to use our trying room or not. We're letting them use it. We're letting our customers be customers, I guess.
Good to hear.
So how about, I have a question. I know here in New Jersey, if you go into a store, a grocery store, or even if you go into a food store to pick up an order, which I did earlier today, there's a sign out front that requests the customers wear a mask.
We're not doing that.
Okay, that was my question.
It's required in Colorado, so it has to. I mean, it's not required.
And I personally fall on the scheme of things of like, hey, you know what? These are our civil liberties, and we're all responsible people, and we should allow our customers, and we should allow each other we should assume that people are going to behave responsibly. So we can put signs up and tell people what maximum capacity is. We tell people, we do some forecasting and tell them that what the fitting process is going to be like. It's a little different now in the store. And we just stop short of telling people what to do.
Right.
And,
well, and it's different if you're in a state where there's no requirements, right? Your county or state may or may not require masks, depending on where you are.
And we take our cue from what we see in other retailers too. And so like without hesitation, like every retailer that's open now of any sort, employees are wearing masks.
Right.
Not all customers are. More and more customers are wearing masks. But so I think
I will just, let me throw one more thing in here. I'm such a
Yeah.
liar. I say I'm not going to talk, but there, I don't know if you guys have seen the charts and the transmission rates. If both people are wearing masks, if your customer comes in and wears a mask
It's
and they
incredible.
had COVID and you aren't wearing, and you're wearing a mask versus both of you wearing masks, and the rate of transmission is spectacularly decreased. And this gets into a whole political debate about human, rights and freedoms. But I'll say this, while it's recommended and we think it matters, every customer is going to have a mask in our store. They can't walk in. That's our requirement. But they'll be very clear when they make their appointment that they need to wear a mask. There is no ifs, ands, or buts. They have to bring their own mask. We will have masks for them if they need them. They're not in massive supply yet, but within the next week, there'll be like 1 billion masks in the United States. They're finally, that's happening, and they're not that expensive. I think I got my last batch for 70 cents. So we will not expose our customers that way. And I think anybody's philosophy thinking that it's some sort of freedom thing, look at the numbers, and you're just putting your employees at risk.
Well, and one thing to keep in mind too is it doesn't even have to be a mask, right? Just a face covering. So I think some people feel a little uncomfortable, like, oh, you have to have a mask. It's like a buff, a scarf, a t-shirt, a sock. I mean, I'm sure you've all seen how you can cut a sock at the end and put a face covering. So yeah,
I was just going to say that we are required, all of our staff wears them when our customers come in, and we did put out a note. We have, we have it on our website, and we have big signage outside of our store on our street sign that we're asking you to put on a face covering when you come in for an appointment or you come in the store. We do have some leftover buffs from some events that we had, so we provide our customers with one that they can keep when they leave. In this
that's a
past
great
week,
idea.
we've had 2 people who balked at wearing something, but otherwise most people are, even though it's not required in the state of Montana at this point, most people are like, oh, geez, thank you. They appreciate that. So
Right.
it's gone over very well with the people. So.
And that's good to hear. And I know there's quite a few companies in our industry. BOCO, I know, has really good inventory right now. If you are looking for a source that to either sell in your store or provide to people or provide to your staff, there's other companies out there as well. They can also do great customization too. One other thing I want to show you guys too, just if you are having any kind of trouble sourcing some of these safety, share that, some of these safety things, the safety shields for the counter, such as this, or if you need any sort of a safety station sign holder or anything like that. One of the fixture companies that we work with, we have for years and years, has become an essential business. They're able to stay open by switching from producing retail fixtures to these safety things. So I can help. We were more than happy to steer you to some resources. Just email either Holly, Ryan, or Andy at 3 Dots Design, and we'll be happy to help you find some of these resources if you're having trouble sourcing anything. We've been steering a lot of retailers to different things that they're trying to track down as they reopen. So that's kind of everything I had out there on my list. I don't know if there's more questions. I'm looking to see I think we've covered everything on the chat. But if anyone has any other questions or anything else I'd like to share, I hope we gave you a few ideas, at least some things to think about as you start going through this process.
I think it was good. Any other questions for the group, to the group? Rich Wills, I do have a source for masks that I'll send to you. Ross asked a question about sales for the people who are open. Real quick, you want to tell us? It sounds like Karen Roberts in Texas, your business has been good. Rich Wills in Florida, good. Anyone else have anything to share?
I will say it's been good. We had planned on just doing appointments for a few days and see how it went. We're going to continue that on, and next week add in another fit station, and just slowly work our way into this as it feels safe for people and our employees. and kind of just see how things go as well.
Okay, Bethany, you want to give everybody one last reminder about the campaign for next week?
Absolutely. So just a reminder that it's we are doing the releasing the digital assets that Ryan and Rita from Run House have created for everybody when your stores reopen. So that webinar will take place again one last time Friday, May 14th at 2 p.m. and we will be sending out a link to register for that shortly.
Okay, so everybody keep a lookout for that. Holly and Andy, thank you so much for doing this. I think it was very helpful to everyone. Everyone stay safe and good luck with where you are along the reopening timeline. And we will see you on the webinar a week from tomorrow.
Yeah, and it's the 15th, not the 14th, so I made a mistake. It's Friday the 15th. Friday the 15th at 2 p.m.
Okay, thanks, Bethany. Thanks, Holly.
Thanks.
Andy, take care.
Thanks, everybody.
Well,
Appreciate it.
Thank you.